Welcome to the 8th Plot and this new batch of videos. Here I'm going to read for you Stolen Futures, my epic, soulful sci-fi series. If you want to know more about the book or the universe of the Arkanauts, go to my official website www.mdrury.co.uk, or if you wish to get the whole series because you like what I read to you, head to Spaceboy Books at readspaceboy.com. Let me know what you think of the story in the comments. Enjoy! Chapter 1. Goodbye. For the last 9 months, I have treated every meal that I sit down to eat like it was the last I'd ever have on planet Earth. It was not that I have been obsessed with death, counting every moment as the end. That would have driven me crazy. Death was not even my concern. It was the very opposite. I was definitely going to live, but the Earth was running out of time. Every day, I would sit at the table on the military base where they kept me safe. I would watch my family eat and wonder if this is going to be the last time we eat together. Would it be the last time me and my brother would bicker over who had the largest portion of meat? The last time Mum would say grace? The last time my dad would force me to eat my vegetables? The meals hadn't been that good since we got to the base. The destroyer was disrupting all international trade, and not much exotic food was getting through to the UK. The vegetables were bland, the meat dried and stringy. There was no gravy anymore, so the tastelessness of every type of English food showed through. Tonight, though, Mum was dishing up the very best we had left. It wasn't just our rations allotted to us by the government, but a full roast dinner. Somehow, she must have sensed that we would never get a chance to eat this wonderful food if we waited much longer. The vegetables steamed in their dishes. The meat leaked rich juices onto the chopping board, and the potatoes continued to fry in their roasting tin. It smelled amazing. It was a shame that we weren't eating in our family house. The Lake District military base wasn't as homey as, well, home. The walls were bare concrete and sparsely decorated with a few things we had grabbed from our house when we had been evacuated from London. Once upon a time, Cumbria had been a popular holiday destination for my family and me. Now, it was not as beautiful as it once was. The lakes were virtually empty, and their dried-up beds were covered with rotting fish, left high and dry with nowhere to go. The beaches were barren and looked more like deserts. Even the forests had turned brown, and the trees were dead and bare. We used to stay in plush hotels on holiday, and this cold, sterile army base was no comparison. I missed the way the Lake District used to look, all the greenery and water. Now it was just like the aftermath of a terrible war. But then I missed how the whole world used to look. The last time I'd seen the outside properly was several weeks ago. Everything beyond the base was declared off limits, not just because the air was becoming spare, but because it was no longer safe for me. As one of the chosen, my safety and security was paramount, and no more risks would be taken. Others just like me were on the base too, unable to wait for the end in their home countries, as some no longer existed or were in states of perpetual war. Factions everywhere vied for the pitiful resources that remained, fighting for air, water and food, to be the ones to survive until the very end. I had not talked to any of my future companions, even though I would be spending the rest of my life with them. I could barely accept that the end was really coming, let alone that I would be the only member of my family spared. I didn't want to connect with the other chosen. They represented the future I didn't want. My mother served the food and grimaced every time the base rocked to the sound of explosions outside. She quickly wiped the expression from her face as she tried to keep up the facade of happiness. I loved her for that. She was trying to make my leaving as painless as possible. Even while the base was under attack by hordes of people searching for a way off the planet, or for food, or just wanting shelter from the chaos sweeping the country, she kept up being my mum. Once the food was served, Mum said grace. As she prayed, I added my own, that by some miracle the earth would be spared. We all said amen, and I still held out hope for a different ending than the one I was expecting. I knew, though, deep down, that nothing had changed. We all took up our cutlery to eat. My little brother was already munching away, scarfing down the food without closing his mouth. "I don't want to see you chew," my mum scolded him, still adhering to old rules that no longer had any relevance. Then, the red phone on the wall rang. I immediately thought, What a waste! I dropped my cutlery onto my plate, and it bounced once and settled in the Yorkshire puds. That was a selfish thought, that all this food was not going to be eaten, and a stupid one too. Considering what was going to happen in a short while, not getting dinner was going to be inconsequential. My dad answered the ringing phone, then bowed his head at the news he received. He didn't bother putting it back on the hook. He just left the phone to hang by its cord as he let it drop. Things then happened fast. I was made to stand. Dad positioned me on my own in the middle of the room. My brother was forced away from his plate by my mum. My dad's face had gone rigid as he fought back emotions. I could see muscles in his jaw twitching. He quickly gathered the bags I was allowed to take. My mother grabbed my little brother and held him close, as if he too was about to be whisked away. My brother was too young to understand what was going on. Maybe he thought I was going on holiday. Then Mum and my brother stood with my dad a few feet away and just watched me, waiting for me to be plucked up and taken away, as they were left behind. Tears formed in my eyes. This was it. I was finally going. They would only give me 5 minutes to say goodbye. I looked down, away from my family. I didn't want to see them crying. No way was that going to be my last memory of them. Hearing their sniffing and sobbing cut me to my very soul. 5 minutes. What do you say in 5 minutes? I suppose by then there wasn't much else to say. In 9 months, I'd like to think that my family had become closer than any on earth. Lots of trips to fun places, celebrations, birthdays, and one wedding, all spectacular and intense. We had talked, cried, yelled, and wallowed together in such a short space of time. And now it was time to let it all go. "Mum, I love you," I said to Mum, still without turning around, but projecting my voice over my shoulder. She sniffed, a painful sound. I couldn't help it, I looked. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and as I watched them fall, I dragged the best words I could from my mind to express how much I loved her. "You're the best mum ever. You did everything right. I'm sorry for not listening to you all the time and making your life hell sometimes." She wrapped me up in the tightest hug she had ever given me. Mothers always hug this strong, demonstrating the bond between mum and precious child, sharing true love every time. I hugged back as strong as I could. "I love you. I don't want to leave," I said, and the tears that fell from my own eyes soaked the jumper she was wearing. We may never have broken apart, mother and son. Why would they let go of each other in these desperate times? But my father wanted his turn with his son, and when he placed a hand on his wife's shoulder, she sniffed and let me go. The hug I got from my dad was not like the hug I got from my mother. It was not as tight. Instead, it imparted warmth and reassurance that everything was going to be all right. It felt like it imparted pride, that my dad, who I looked up to, was proud of me, and I was going with his blessing. It was amazing to feel such reassurance. Hugs from fathers were always rare, and that's what made them special when you got one, like a reward for being a good son. Then the hug tightened in the last moment. My dad didn't want to let go of me any more than my mum did. "I love you, son." "I love you too, Dad," I sniffed, and wiped my eyes with my sleeve. We didn't say anything more. Sons and fathers never had to. The respect and love was always unspoken. I regret that most of all. I took my parents for granted, and looking back on all they ever did for me, made me realise that no words could ever express the thanks and love I have for them. Then came the goodbye I was dreading the most. My little brother, Jack. It was the worst goodbye, because I felt love, regret, and shame all at the same time. Love because he was my little brother, cute and funny and full of energy and wonder. He was amazing. When he was born, I had been old enough to appreciate him and not be jealous of his presence in our family. Dread came over me because I was going to escape, and he wasn't. He was younger, I was older. By that reasoning alone, he had to go, not me. He had to be saved. Not me. It wasn't fair. I was glad to be chosen, and I didn't want to die, but Jack deserved to be chosen too. The reasonable part of my mind told me I had no choice. They chose me, not him, and I didn't have any control over any of it. I hugged my brother hard. I'd never hugged him before. It wasn't the done thing between brothers, at least not us. He squirmed as I embraced him. He didn't understand its significance. It was the first and last hug we would share. When I let go, he looked at me and was the picture of innocence. He was happy and content, seeing his big brother off for a holiday, not understanding the calamity about to befall him. I stepped back and looked at my family, Mum, Dad and Jack. They all smiled and waved, but the smiles were tight, holding back tears save for Jack's. I stared at them until the memory burnt into my brain. My 5 minutes were almost up. The teleport would happen soon, stealing me away from everything I loved, and the Earth's demise. Thank you for listening to this chapter from Stolen Futures. Please like or comment on this video, and subscribe to The 8th Plot so you don't miss out on the next installment of this book. Goodbye.